This time, I'd like to introduce my good friend Les Moreland. Les Moreland is our CEO of Wiregrass Electric Cooperative. He's been with Wiregrass Electric Cooperative since 2005, and serving as our CEO since 2014. Les is doing a great job, and appreciate all you do to help support our cooperative. He has some good news to share, and Les, take it away, my friend.
All right, thank you, Brad. Give me a slide advance. One more. I'm extremely pleased to have a few minutes today to talk to the membership, mainly via the internet. This is being recorded, as Brad said, so we've got some good information here that if you're watching live, make sure you tell your neighbor that there's some good information they can pick up off of our recording, which will be on our website linked, Brad? All our social media will have it, and so forth. So, as Brad said, I'm the general manager and CEO here. Got here in 2005 and been general manager since 2013. This is 2020, the year 2020. It's the end of a decade, so we're 2 decades into a century. I find myself the few weeks before each annual meeting thinking about what is it important for the membership to know. It's kind of like when the President of the United States makes a State of the Union address. This is the one opportunity we have to speak to the membership and to underscore what we think it's important for our members to know. So I give a lot of thought to it. So I'm gonna give a little summary of who we are, what we're all about. You are member owners of the cooperative. That's different. Everybody doesn't realize that. We're not for profit. So our member owners elect our 9 board of directors. So the membership governs the co-op. And we're all about serving our members. We are not for profit, and that's very different. And I hope some of the things I say help you understand the cooperative difference today. To start with, as you can see from our slide, we're headquartered right here in Hartford, 81 years, so we were started back in 1939. We still have district offices scattered throughout our territory. We have an office in Dothan, an office in Sampson, an office in Ashford. Now, that's big news today in the modern world. If you live in this area, you realize that the investor-owned utility that services our area closed half of its offices in the last year or so. Some of our cooperative family nearby have either scaled back or are closing some of their offices for a good part of the month. But one thing I'll say about our board of directors and the leadership here is we think it's important that we have a physical presence that's accessible to our membership. So we're maintaining our 4 offices, and we love making it easy for you to do business with us online through the online services. But we're old-fashioned. Sometimes you just want to see somebody. Sometimes you just want to come in and face-to-face work through something. Or when you call, you want somebody that's your neighbor from the area answering the phone. One of my most frustrating experiences in the last year has been other utilities and other communication companies that I have had to deal with personally, and having to wait 30 or 40 minutes on the phone to get somebody to answer. And when they do, I find out they're in Nicaragua and they don't speak English. Now, that's what a for-profit business does. Why? Because the most important thing is that bottom line profit. An electric cooperative is owned by the membership. The most important thing we do is serve our members. So that physical presence is part of why we do that. So we're now at 25,000 meters, 18,000 members, as Ms. Donna said. It was a little bit over that, just over 18,000. 3,100 miles of line with 66 of us serving. And you can see from the U.S. map that we're in the southeast corner of Alabama. So my next slide, please. I like to show this slide once in a while because this is the zoom in to the southeast part of the state. And so you can see our territory. As you can see, we're mostly Houston and Geneva County. And in the pink that you see on the map here, that's your Wiregrass territory. You notice there's a green blotch, and that's Dothan Utilities. You'll notice some white blotches. Those are Alabama Power areas. But the first thing you'll notice is there's 91 miles east and west, 23 miles north and south, and we're on a 2,093 square mile footprint. That's a lot of territory. You might notice that Dothan is only 47 square miles. So immediately you begin to see what one of the differences is between a cooperative, a municipality, and an investor-owned utility. We have very low density spread out over a lot of miles, and that goes into our cost of service. That's the answer to a lot of questions we have about what it costs to serve you. Now, if you live in Houston County, 1 out of every 3 resident of Houston County is a member of the co-op. So we serve 1 out of 3 people in Houston County. If you live in Geneva County, more than 50% of the residents in Geneva County are served by the co-op. In addition, you'll notice on the very end of the system, we have 1,000 members in Covington County. We have 1,000 in Coffee County in that little splotch there. And then around 200 in Dale County. So that's who we are. Next slide, please. So, to start with, what is our focus? You know, you may have noticed on the first slide, and it's repeated here, that the board and the employees got together on a mission statement about 7 years ago, and we said we want to be your trusted and preferred energy provider. Trusted and preferred energy provider. What does that mean? Well, because of the 1984 legislation, if you live in our territory, you don't have a choice whether we serve you or not. But we would like to act and serve you in such a way that if you had a choice, you would prefer us, you would pick us. So that governs how we think when we are interacting with our membership. What about trusted? Wow. Does anybody trust leadership anymore for anything? It's really, really sad that so much of our media and even our political environment, at least on the national level, that there's so little trust in what anybody says. But we have the opportunity because we're your neighbor, because we go to church with you, because we're at the ball field with you. We have the opportunity to act in such a way in our private lives and especially in our dealings with you where we earn your trust. And that's what we seek every day. And energy issues are very complicated, and they're certainly evolving rapidly. But we want to be the source of information for what's happening with energy issues and help you so that together we can educate our legislators and we can influence the future course of regulation and energy legislation. So our first focus is safety. We always say that every day that our first thought is, and we do this in prayer, we pray for our employees. As you know, our linemen do hazardous work. We operate hazardous equipment. This year, our prayer for safety has come right out of Psalm 91. I woke up this morning singing Psalm 91. I won't sing it for you today, but it's the psalm that says, "He who dwells under the wings of the shadow of the Almighty." Well, now I can't quote it. But we are to dwell under the Lord's protection. And the passage in chapter 91 of Psalms that really struck me was that he delivers us from the noisome pestilence. Now, so one of our big safety issues this year has been the pandemic. That's why we're not having a physical meeting. That's why we're spread out in this room. But one of the reasons that things are going so well at your cooperative is every day we seek to honor God in what we do. We seek to acknowledge God. And as we have dealt with these overwhelming issues relating to the pestilence and storms, we cry out every day for God to watch over and protect us. Psalm 91 also has a passage about God sending his ministering angels to watch over us. So safety first. It starts with how we train and the equipment that we provide our employees. It goes to our attitude of seeking God for protection and just the faith that we have that whatever we do, he's watching over us. The other part of our focus is always the membership. Back in since about the 80s, if you went to business school, you were taught in your MBA program that what everything was all about was maximizing profits, stockholder value. Your cooperative nation and your cooperative network has a completely different viewpoint. We're not for profit. We're all about serving our members in areas that are not economically feasible to serve, and everything we do has in mind what's best for the member. So this slide shows some of our values. Can I have the next slide? And finally, our customer service vision statement, lighting up members' lives and powering through storms together. I'm going to unpack that with the next slide. Now, obviously, it's very important to us to measure how are we doing. And in 2020, the theme of my talk today is going to be 2020 hindsight. As we look back over the last 20 years and last year, how do the members say we're doing? Well, we had 2 member surveys this year. We normally, through our Power South partners, have an independent surveyor survey our membership. They either call or email about 250 to 300 of our members and ask a series of questions. And so Power South does one survey for us, but we had the privilege a month or so ago, our National Rural Electric Cooperative asked us, did we want to participate in a nationwide survey they were conducting to see how we did with the pandemic. So we took the opportunity. And so I'm going to show you the results of 2 member surveys today. Next slide. This is the one that NRECA conducted asking, how did your cooperative handle the pandemic? You'll notice we're the green bar on this slide. Then there's a orange bar, and then there's a blue bar. And so you see the national average is the blue bar, the region of the country is the orange bar in Wiregrass Electric. And you'll notice from top to bottom, our membership scored us higher than both the regional and the national average on questions like, we maintain business continuity, we see members as individuals, and so forth. So over 90% of our members think that the way we handle keeping our office open, the way we handle keeping the members' lights on during the storm, that everything we did regarding that, over 90% were satisfied with how we handled it. Next slide. Now this is the survey that Power South hired an independent group to do. And this one, as you can see, we've been doing since 2005. And it asked a series of questions, again, to 253 of our members of how are we doing. You'll notice once again, 90% of the members were overall satisfied with how we're serving them. And there were 2 or 3 areas that scored a little bit less than the other areas. Generally, people like the friendliness of our cashiers. They like the way we respond on storms. They like the fact that the lights almost never go off. And there's 2 or 3 areas that we get some helpful feedback in terms of things that they'd like to either see better or maybe they just don't understand. I'm going to touch on a couple of those today. All right, next slide. So, before we get into the nuts and bolts of a couple of those things, so how does your cooperative compare with other cooperatives, with investor-owned utilities, and with municipalities when it comes down to member satisfaction? Now, is 90% good? It seems pretty good, doesn't it? Well, You'll notice that the national average for electric cooperatives last year was 73% satisfaction. So it helps us to know that compared to cooperative peers, that our members seem overall more satisfied than our peers do. What about municipalities? On average, they scored 72%. Now, municipalities have a lot of density, and they usually have low power cost, and yet their satisfaction of the membership in dealing with them is a lot worse than it is with a cooperative. And that has to do with, are they available? Are they putting a fee on my credit card? They're all kind of aggravate. If the power's out, are they communicating? There are all kind of reasons people are dissatisfied with their municipality. And then with the investor owns, they're at 72%. Your Southern company, which would be Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, scored a little better than the average investor owned. They were at 75%. But even with that, what's encouraging to your team here and to the Wiregrass family is that even though we have some disadvantages, all the geography we serve, the lack of density, our power cost wholesale is a little bit high, so we really struggle to keep our rates competitive. Even with that, our membership is overall highly satisfied with your cooperative. Next slide. So now let's unpack the last 20 years and last year just a little bit. As I prayed about what would be important, I picked up on some big trends. We have survey data that goes all the way back to the year 2000 with critical benchmark data on how we compare with others. So let's just start with population and what's probably the single most challenge that we have here. Remember the map, Geneva County, more than half the people in Geneva County are Wiregrass members, and a third of Houston County. Rural America is going down in population 0.5% every year for the last 20 years. And we see that in Geneva County. The population is shrinking. Meanwhile, the urban areas are increasing in population by about 2%. So we see that in our territory in the area just around Dothan. So what we have is sort of an out-migration, very slowly out of Geneva County, and right around Dothan we see good growth. And fortunately for Wiregrass Electric over the last 20 years, the net difference has been we've had some growth. So we've had 40% meter growth from the year 2000 until the year 2020. Back in 2000, we had 18,600 meters. This year, we're right at 25,000. So that's good meter growth. Obviously, that's a long-term trend that's concerning to us. And I'll just go ahead and say now, we are working on strategies every day to mitigate that and offset it. And there are two main areas where we think that can make a difference, or really three. One is addressing the digital divide, where we're trying to attract partners like Troy Cable into our territory to bring broadband internet to all our members. Nowadays, internet is an essential. If people are going to buy a house or put a business in, if there's not broadband, you're going to get passed over. So we're doing a lot of work in that area to make it attractive for people to expand internet into our territory. 4-lane roads is another area. I commend Brad here, who is involved with a coalition from this area that's working regularly to try to attract some 4-lane roads into this area. And that coalition has already completed about 3 phases toward that goal, where some studies have been done. And you may have noticed in our magazine in recent months that we just got a $450,000 federal grant, the coalition did, in order to do an environmental study and to really map out 4-laning 167 all the way from the Florida line all the way to Highway 84 and then to 231. And that will make a big difference if we can have some good infrastructure. And then the third thing that we're doing to sort of work against this trend is economic development, which is both a quarterly meeting here with leaders, and we have our industrial park next door. And currently there's a spec building going in over there. so that we can attract jobs, high-paying jobs into this market area. So we're working against these trends. Now, in addition to the growth of 40% in meter growth, you might be surprised to know that the total capital investment it took for all our poles in line back in the year 2000 was $50 million. And Woody, you just reported on our balance sheet now, utility plant is now at $120,000. So over the last 20 years, we've seen a tremendous increase in investment for poles and wire. Jason Thrash, our VP of Engineering, puts together a 4-year work plan every year. It takes about $6 million a year of investment just to keep our system maintained, as well as new services, new subdivisions, serving new businesses. So there's a lot of dollars that it goes into keeping us viable. Now, one of the most interesting things that affects Wiregrass Electric is the ratio of residential to commercial accounts. In the year 2000, we were 92% residential and 8% commercial. As of the end of last year, we had grown to 20% of our business being commercial industrial. So now only 80% is residential. Now that's not because we haven't been adding several hundred residential meters a year, but this is this economic development that we're talking about, our partnership with the Wiregrass Economic Development Council that meets in Enterprise, and with what they call Grow Dothan, which is the Dothan Area Chamber of Commerce, and having everyone help us to recruit businesses, which will be jobs. So we've had some pretty good success in the last 20 years growing our commercial industrial load. Why does that matter? One of the biggest things that drives power cost is the diversity of your load. And obviously in the year 2000, we had a lousy load factor because residential services only run about a 35 or 40% load factor. We've improved that a little bit, but the average cooperative has a 40% commercial industrial load. So it's very important to us to get that up. Now you might be surprised to know that the investor-owned utilities have a 70% commercial industrial base. The city of Dothan has a 70% commercial industrial base. And that makes the wholesale power cost a lot lower. So that's a disadvantage we have since we only have a load factor in the low 40s. So we're working very hard on economic development. Looking back over the last 20 years, we also see that, especially in the last 10 years, we have an almost perfect safety record. I'm really happy that the last time we had a serious contact injury here was 2003. So for 17 years, God has watched over us, God's favor, and the good training that we do on a regular basis to keep our men safe, the good equipment we provide them, we haven't had a serious injury. So the circle of safety is very important here. So we can say safety has improved greatly in the last 20 years. Now, the thing that bowled me over as I thought about it was since 2010, we've now gone an entire decade, 10 years, without a revenue increase, which means no rate increase. Now, I'm going to pause here and let everybody think about that for a minute. If you'd have told me in 2010 our members would not be paying any more for power for the next 10 years, I would have said that can't be true. Now, I just told you, utility plant costs that we had $6 million a year in work plan. So I'm going to have to unpack that. How do you go 10 years when wages are going up and benefit costs are going up, materials are going up, and you got all kind of money being spent? How can you go 10 years without raising revenue and raising rates? Well, obviously, it's good board leadership, good management, and good strategic decision making. One of the interesting things is that the number of employees that we have, in 2005, the high water mark was 70, and there's 66 of us today. So part of keeping the cost of service in control is having the right number of employees here. and utilizing technology and other things to keep our head count at the right size. So that's the next item. Since 2005, there's been a veritable explosion in the use of technology here, starting with smart meters, followed by SCADA, and I won't say what the acronym means, Jason. What is it? Somebody say supervisory, controlled, and this is we would invite everybody to take a look in our operations center sometime, but we have technologies now where we're controlling our system from our operations center. Everything from what the voltages are during an outage to be able to control things in the control center that will reroute power so that your power comes on faster. Just amazing technologies. We're able to cut meters on and off as people move out. That used to be a big cost. Every employee here has a desktop and a smartphone or a laptop and a tablet. We've gone from prior to 2005 being a little bit of a lagger or a little bit behind on technology use to we're really now on the leading edge of deploying technology. And that is really one of the main reasons that we've been able to keep the cost of service under control. Number 10 I listed is state-of-the-art fleet and safety equipment. So the board of directors allows us to get the equipment that our men need in order to be safe. The bucket trucks, the diggers, the tools that enable them to do this really hazardous work in a safe manner. And in addition, the servers and the computers and the laptops and so forth that the rest of us need to do our jobs. In the last 20 years, I've noticed, going all the way back to 2000, that our system reliability has improved. We have a score for system reliability that's called SAIDI. That's another acronym. But in 2019, our SAIDI score was 99.98%. So that means that only 0.02% of the time, if you're an individual user here, was your power off. So the average member only lost 108 minutes, or about an hour and 48 minutes of power, and there's 8,760 hours in a year. So our system reliability in the last few years has been extremely good. And that has to do with a lot of factors that your board of directors has supported us on. For example, back in 2005, we had one internal right-of-way crew. A few years later, we began to hire contractors to cut right-of-way, and we went on a 6-year cycle so that about 500 miles a year got cut. 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to cut right-of-way on a 4-year cycle. And what that means is we're trimming the trees off the power lines, so all that improves system reliability. The final thing on our 20-year look back has to do with our wholesale power supplier, our friends at Power South. 20 years ago, 60% of our power was from coal, coal power plant. And now, starting next year, there'll be virtually no coal burned for electricity. 60% of our power next year will be natural gas. Your wholesale power provider, Power South, is building a state-of-the-art natural gas plant at the Loman Energy Center. When it goes online, it will be the most efficient, lowest cost power plant in the nation. It's close to the pipeline. So that's a big change, and it supports the overall initiative that Power South has to gradually reduce our carbon footprint, reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere. That's a regulatory matter. It's an environmental concern that many have. So natural gas has got 50% of the carbon emissions that a coal plant has. In addition, the fourth quarter of next year, we're expecting the 2 Vogtle nuclear reactor units to come online. When they do, 10% of your power will be nuclear starting the fourth quarter of next year. Why does that matter? nuclear power is 100% carbonless, and it's dispatchable. It's available 99+% of the time. We like nuclear because it's dispatchable. Solar and wind that you hear about in the media a lot is only available when the sun's shining and when the wind's blowing. But we took a different route. During the last 10 years, when about 30 states had renewable mandates, most of those utilities have experienced in excess of 20% increases in their rates. Power South has waited on renewables until they were economically feasible. So our first solar project will be in about 2022, and we have an 80 megawatt solar operation that will be in Wing, Alabama, over in Covington, Mr. Nolan, over in Covington County, Florala. So once that goes online, we'll have 80 megawatts of solar in our mix. So we're going to adopt renewable when it's economically feasible, which is one of the things that the 10% of the people that express that they're not overall satisfied with us say, why don't you do more with renewables? Well, the answer to that question is, if we had done it in the last 10 years, your rates would be at least 20% higher. And we're very aware that about 20 to 25% of our membership really struggles to pay the power bill. So we're very careful about anything that increases our cost of service. Next slide, please. Now, that was 20 years. Let's just zero in on 2019 and 2020. So starting this year and looking at this year, we've had an above normal storm season in the spring and the fall. So in our Wiregrass Electric territory, we've had 4 major storms. 3 were in April, and 1 was in September. Our team, our weather warriors, our linemen, were able to restore power within 24 hours in each of those cases. Now, you'll know in prior years, especially like in 2018 when Hurricane Michael hit us, if necessary, our operations and engineering folks will work all night long in order to get the power done the first day. And then 16, 17 hours a day until it's done after that. Fortunately, this year, we haven't had a storm that went past 24 hours. There were an additional 4 storms, or additional 3 storms besides the 4 that hit us that affected Louisiana and other co-ops in Alabama. So on 3 occasions, we've sent our crews to help other folks. Now, you all know the challenge the pandemic has had. We started the year in January in Alabama with a 2.7% unemployment rate. By April, the unemployment rate in Alabama had gone to 13.8%, and now we're back down to 5.6%. So, point 5 addresses how that affected our area. And this year, we have a newfound respect and appreciation for our cashiers and our member service representatives. And I want to tell you what we did and maybe compare it to what some others did. But you remember when everybody was, closing up where you couldn't come in, we never closed our offices. Many of our cooperative friends quit taking phone calls. There were over 30 of them that outsourced all their phone calls to a call center in Tennessee. But Brad and Rhonda and Jennifer and the 11 other customer service people got together and said, how do we want to handle this? And some people were letting people answer the phone from home. Some were about half-staffed because they just couldn't see a way to come to work. And I don't believe we had a single person that took off. Every one of our ladies in the call center said, we want to come to work every day. We want to take care of our members. So we never closed our offices. For a few weeks in the worst part of the pandemic, we closed the lobbies, but we kept the drive-thrus open. And as soon as we could, we opened back up. And the 4 ladies in the call center came to work every day and answered the phone all day long. And as a result, every member that had any kind of a problem, if they got laid off, if they were out of work, if they were struggling, we found a way to help them. What these folks do is, first of all, if you are behind on your bill, we don't just cut you off, we call you, we reach out to you. Secondly, we partner with 17 different agencies that help people with their power bill. And if there's any way, the caring people in our call center will connect you with a resource that will help you. And then thirdly and finally, we'll make arrangements of some kind, give you an extension to pay. If you need to set part of your power cost up in a debt management, there are all kinds of ways that we work with people. But here's the good news. Our delinquent accounts and potential bad debts this year are at record lows. While the rest of the world is suffering from the pandemic, and we've had our best year ever as far as our members' ability to pay their bills. So we're real proud of that. We had no rate increase or no cost of service increase in 2020. I'm going to unpack that in a minute. Your board of directors retired $1.9 million in capital credits in the last couple of months. So 8,500 of our members got a significant amount of credit on their bill. The members that aren't active got checks. So that totals up to a cumulative amount of $14 million since 2005. So since 2005, $14 million of our margins have been returned to our members. Once again, that's the difference in a not-for-profit cooperative. If we were for-profit, that $14 million would have gone to a stockholder. In the cooperative, you are the stockholder. You're the owner. So that money goes back to the member. In addition, number 9, we've just increased our power cost adjustment, which is a fuel credit, from 4 to 10 mils. 10 mils is a penny. So if you get a bill in October or November and you use 1,500 kilowatt hours, you're going to have about a $15 credit on your monthly bill. Now, what the fuel credit does is if during the current year we achieve the margins that we need in order to satisfy our US and our lenders, we immediately try to give that money back, and usually give a lot of money back in the fourth quarter, because by then we know we can afford to give it back. So we've just increased from 4 to 10 mils. Since 2010, we've given back $11 million in fuel credits. That once again, that money would have gone to a stockholder and a for-profit. By the end of the year, it looks like we'll approach $12 million in fuel credits. Next slide, please. Now, I'm glad that I left this slide in. When I was talking about the folks that are there to talk to you face-to-face or to hold your hand, here's the picture. It's a beautiful group of smiling people. 7 years ago, we studied the book Customer Service Revolution, and we came up with our never and always statements, which is, it's like I'm never rude, and I always, treat people with courtesy and respect or whatever. And one of our always statements is, let the member hear your smile. Think about that. Let the member hear your smile. So you can see their smile, but when you talk to them over the phone, you hear their smile by the way they engage you. Next slide, please. This is another group of unsung heroes. These are some of our accountants. And like the member service folks, they had a meeting, and while most other folks, the accountants, were going home and working from home, our folks said, no, we can't really do our job the way we want to without being here. So they came every day during the COVID pandemic, and we're real proud of their effort. Next slide. Okay, I want to unpack this just a minute. You really got to try to take this one in, y'all. Our board of directors looks every month at what our rates are compared to all of our co-op peers and compared to Alabama Power and Gulf Power. You don't know how you're doing unless you compare it with somebody else, right? So we look at this slide every month, and this was the one we looked at the board meeting in August. Now, I knew this annual meeting was coming up, so I said, I'm going to look at what our rates were in 2010 and do a calculation. So across the bottom of this slide is a calculation for what our rates were in 2010. So let's just start with 1,500 kilowatt hours. So you see Wiregrass Electric, if you used 1,500 kilowatt hours, was right at $179.95. Our rate back in 2010, if you used 1,500 kilowatt hours, was $179.91. So you see the average user paid exactly the same to Wiregrass Electric 10 years ago that they paid this year. And you see how that compares. We're slightly above the middle, and that's better than you think. Why? Because remember, we only have 20% commercial load, and the average cooperative has a 40% commercial load. And what that means is our power cost, on average, is almost a half a cent higher than the average co-op that is served by Power South. So we have to overcome a higher power cost in order for our rate to be that low. So in a minute, I'm going to tell you the main reasons we're able to do that. Now, the second thing is, if you're 2,000 kilowatt hours, we were at $226 compared to $231 10 years ago. And that's great. We beat ourselves. But look at your investor-owned utilities for that same amount. See the amounts, that's about $30 a month higher than us. Now, how's that? They got 1.5 million meters, and we only got 25,000. We're doing something right. And then finally, at 3,000 kilowatt hours, your bill would have been $318 this year. 10 years ago, your bill would have been $334. And look at your investor owns down here. That's $75 less than one of them. Again, you got to really soak on that to get the significance of that. Next slide. So, how is this possible? These are just a few of the reasons that I came up with, about a half a dozen reasons that our rates have remained as competitive as they are. The first one is the management of our debt portfolio. I think, Woody, you mentioned our portfolio ended the year at $58 million in debt. Okay. Well, you know it matters whether you're borrowing money at 5.5% or 2.5%. So kudos, Lisa, our CFO, Lisa, manages our debt portfolio. And over the last few years, at strategic times, we've refinanced debt. So several years ago, we refinanced $17 million of debt that was between 5 and 6% with CoBank, which saved our members about $6.2 million over 20 years. And then this year, we're doing the same thing. You know, we borrowed about $10 million at the low point this year at 1.17% interest. You know, borrowed 30-year debt, 33-year debt. And we're paying off our higher interest rate loans. So your finance manager, Miss Lenore, is saving the members about $1.5 million a year in interest expense. She also manages an investment portfolio. There's a lot of cash flowing through here, so she invests in interest-bearing checking accounts, CDs, commercial paper, and she prepays 2 vendors that have cushion of credit accounts, which is RUS and Power South. So in 2019, she generated $600,000 of investment income, and many years ago, we weren't doing that. We've reduced bad debts to essentially zero. You may find this hard to believe, but a few years ago, our write-offs were upwards toward $400,000 a year, and there's people that couldn't afford to pay their bills. And through the technology, through the smart meters, and Member Service manages a program called Prepay, and now folks that have a hard time managing credit can pay as they go. They pay every day. And as a result, our bad debts have gone from $375,000 to zero. And I literally mean zero or less than zero. I have a slide that would show that, but I probably won't go. But what happens is the amount of money we're collecting on old bad debt more than offsets the new bad debt. So another area, I've talked about how great our accounting and finance departments are. But Jason Thrasher, our VP of Engineering, has been working since he's been here the last few years on improving line loss. Looking back at KRTA, in the early 2000s, our line loss was 9%. Now, what's line loss? Okay, the power's generated hundreds of miles away in a coal plant or a gas plant or whatever, and it goes over the transmission line, then it goes to the substation, and as that wire heats up, and as those transformers heat up, electricity just dissipates. And back in the early 2000s, we lost 9% of what we bought. Well, the engineers know how to fix that. So they're fixing the system, they're sizing the transformers right, they're getting the wire right, they're doing all kind of stuff every year. And last year, line loss was only 5.75%. Well, based on our power costs, that's a $1.25 million per year savings in energy that we're passing through to our members. That keeps us from having to raise the rates. That has kept us from it. Information technology. The smart meters revolutionized things. As I mentioned, we went from 70 to 66 employees. At the same time, our meters went way up. Well, I did a back-of-the-envelope calculation, and using information technology and fleet technology is saving us about $1.6 million per year in labor cost, because our load and our meters are growing, but our number of employees is not. Now, PowerSouth CEO Gary Smith meets with our board once a year, and he made the comment the last time he was over here, of all the systems he visits, as he looks at the way we do things, he thinks our distribution costs are among the lowest in the PowerSouth system, because we're doing things to lower the cost of service. Finally, smart meters, SCADA, voltage management, load control, response systems are another $650,000 a year. So just these half a dozen areas have reduced our cost of service by $6 million over the last 10 years. Next slide. This is just the slide on bad debt. You can zero in on that for the camera. It just shows you that there was almost $340,000 in bad debt in 2010. And not only was there no bad debt the last 5 years, but you see we actually collected old bad debt greater than what we wrote off. That's just a great story. Next slide. That's it. Okay, now, I know that was a lot of information, and I know y'all are tired, but I just felt like this was important information for us to record so that our members could know what a great job the team here is doing. That's my report, Brad.
Well, thank you, Les. There's a lot of good news there, a lot of good news, and it's hard to sum up, just in one little short breath. It really is, because there's a lot of things that's happening good here, and again, there are reasons for that, but the main reasons for that is our good board of trustees that allow us to do things, and our employees, the 66 that Les mentioned, the 66 men and women that work here that absolutely are fabulous people, well-trained, motivated folks. They know what they're doing, and they do a good job, and we appreciate what they do. It's just good stuff, really is.